Hey, welcome to another episode of PSYWAR podcast. My name is Captain Alex Lagrasso, and today I have with me Erin McQuagge, who's a PSYOP veteran and who also still works within the PSYOP community. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so we'll start out by just doing a little intro, if you could.
Sure. So I started out as an infantry officer and came in. I was assigned to Germany. Great place for a
Must be nice.
individual.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very good experience there. Stayed there. Transitioned to PSYOP in 2008, and then been on BRAG ever since. Served with both 9th Battalion and 8th Group when they were still a provisional unit.
Wow. So, Erin, let me ask you: when you were an infantry officer, how did you transition, or how did you even hear about psychological operations all the way out from Germany too?
Yeah. So this is a few years ago, 2000s.
Okay. I think I was still in high school then, yeah.
Right, and I was deployed to Iraq and met this civil affairs team. And I asked them, well, what do you do? And basically summed it up as, move money, fund Iraqi police, and, that's interesting. It wasn't too appealing, but, okay.
They weren't pulling security, is what
they were not pulling security, which was always a good thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Took that, put that in my kit bag, moved on. And I was branch detailed, not by choice. I was, going to be an infantry officer for several years, and then transitioned over to become an AG officer.
Okay.
And, AG wasn't appealing to me.
Yeah.
And I was looking around and came up on this, the PSYOP thing. It is becoming a branch, and this is about 2006. It needed people. I was like, what is PSYOP?
Yeah.
What the hell do you do with that?
So did you reach out? Did someone reach out to you after you, how did you go about, reaching out to get more information on PSYOP?
So actually called the branch manager,
Okay.
Who was dual hatting as the civil affairs and the PSYOP branch manager.
Okay, sounds about right for 2006.
2006, yeah. And this PSYOP thing sounds interesting, maybe. And he sent me a couple of things. We went back and forth on it, and then put in a packet for it, and got picked up to come to BRAG.
Nice. And when you came to Fort Bragg, did you go through a qualification course or anything like that, or a language course?
It was a little different than it is now. So if there was only a board packet, select people. They did not have the selection phase at this point. Came to BRAG, spent some time in the HHC where they're gathering up everybody. Did language. I did French, and did essentially it's probably about the same length and stuff. I'm sure the contents changed, but the actual PSYOP course. And then after that, assigned as a detachment commander to 9th Battalion. And did a tour in Afghanistan and one in Iraq with 9th Battalion, and then was assigned to 8th Group, the AF guy.
I think Erin and I are a mirror image of each other. I was an infantry officer, came PSYOP, and went to 9th Battalion, and also went to Afghanistan too. But separated by a lot of different years. We got many different stories. So tell me about your duties, responsibilities, kind of what you did as a PSYOP detachment commander out in Afghanistan in the early, 2013 or?
This is probably about 2010.
2010, okay.
Yeah, so went out there in the surge, and I think we were talking earlier, the difference between your experience and mine was we actually sent teams out into the village, the ODAs. And,
so you sent other PSYOPers out into the villages in different provinces and stuff.
Yeah. The really impressive thing, and I kind of missed it at the time, was we're talking young E5s and young E4s, just out of the PSYOP course. I didn't know much about PSYOP then, just coming out, and obviously they didn't, and they were doing the best they could with tools they had, and just go out in the village with this ODA team and meet up with these locals, get a radio station going, and we're going to try to do the best we can with Afghanistan. Very interesting, great opportunities.
So was there any other countries that you were afforded the opportunity to deploy to during your time at 9th Battalion?
Iraq, completely different mission set. So at this point, it's 2011.
Okay, so a year later, you went,
to Iraq.
Wow.
Yeah. The Iraq mission had changed, we were no longer going outside the wire. Instead, it was a very inside job, and essentially had a product development detachment at that point.
And what is describe to me what a product development detachment is, because I kind of hear that and I'm like, okay, you just are going to develop a piece of paper and then publish it out or put it out. I'm sure like the internet too in 2011 wasn't too robust as it is like now, right? Like I'm sure the Iraqis didn't use it as much as they do now.
No, and we didn't.
Yeah.
Either. There was no major authorities that would allow us to do that. There was some kind of kept away use, but largely it was the traditional conventional PSYOP where we had young E5s running a series and creating products and publishing on them. So they did both the product development and the actual PSYOP stuff of managing that series. Great opportunity, but you did not get the interaction with the locals at that point. So you had very little feedback on how your product was doing.
I'm sure, yeah, like none. And that's all we live on is measure of effectiveness, measure of performance too. That's like your senior leaders want to know that. Like, how's it doing? And you're like, sir.
Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Iraq was scheduled to just shut down, and so we were there to turn off the lights.
Right.
And it was, and close up. So.
Very interesting time to be there, I'm sure.
Yeah, very interesting, and all the things you could have done, you wish you could have done and stuff, and go back and fix things, but it went how it went.
Yeah. Wow, very unique experience. So, coming back from Iraq, you then transitioned to a contractor job, is what you've kind of told me, right?
Yeah, actually, I did some time in 8th Group.
Okay.
It's a provisional unit, so I had to be a staff guy.
There you go. That's the officer way.
Yeah, it is. It is the destiny. Mm-hmm. But had a really good time. Had a lot of good individuals. Had a very good boss in 8th Group. And he taught me a lot of stuff that I still carry with me to this day.
Well, that's great.
How to how to interact with higher echelons and stuff, and how to maneuver within that realm.
Yeah, very important.
Got out in 2013.
Okay.
With a drawdown, post-Iraq drawdown. So did a year or did a graduate degree, and then got picked up for this job in Afghanistan as a PSYOP planner, as a strategic communications planner.
Okay.
And
I worked with a lot of strategic communications planners during my time in Afghanistan. Most of them coming from like Northrop Grumman or DC contracts and stuff that were out there for like a very long time. Some of them were like there longer than a year. Was your experience something similar to that as well?
So I spent a year and a half there.
Wow.
In a long time. And you come back and forth to the U.S. a bit, but I did meet individuals who were out there for 5 years, seen Afghanistan change.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your time like, how was your time as a contractor as opposed to your time as a detachment commander there in 2010? Being there, 3-4 years later, was there a difference in like what you did or wave of what you guys were trying to have influence on with the population and were helping out, build up that Afghan information cell almost? Because my time there, that was one of our big things, was like building up their IO cell.
Yeah. Quite numerous differences. On one hand, I was working at the strategic level, so way different than the tactical level. We're trying to make a pacify a village and stuff, and get that village onto amenable terms with the U.S. and stuff. And this was a lot more detached. We didn't go outside the wire or anything. So it's a very different mission set.
Yeah.
And the attitude, the overall mission and stuff had changed quite a bit. It had shifted from U.S. forces out in the field with the populace to U.S. forces behind the lines and stuff, behind the wire, and Afghans as the primary front. So that was different. And then the third thing that was different was I was no longer an Army officer. I was a contractor.
Yeah.
And I had no authority. So different in some way. I guess probably the worst way is coming out of it and saying like you're no longer Captain McQuagge. You have no authority here or anything. But the good thing that came out of that was I now didn't have that authority, so there was no rank barriers. I could go and work and talk with E5s and E4s, and especially a lot of them who were coming out of the course and who were in a similar position as I was in 2010, too far removed, and say, hey, do it like this. And it's going to make it a lot easier on you, and how to do certain things. And even the most mundane things like, hey, this is how you make Excel work for you and make it simpler. And it's a staff thing, and just helping them out with that was very rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't tell you all the contractors that were former PSYOPers that I talked to and have actually put me in the place I am now, who've helped me and guided me and gave me like the best advice.
Yeah.
Because they have 20 years of experience. 5 years of experience is more than I have, and I'm going to listen to them and so intently, and then actually implement some of their suggestions that they're putting out. And I can do that because I'm still a green suiter,
right.
And I can brief that to my higher ups and stuff, and they like that because I have the backing from such influential contractors that were former PSYOPers. I mean, you guys still never cease to amaze me on what you can provide and bring to the table. I think it's very, very pertinent, and it's very cool that you can be aligned with us too, and we can work together cordially. It's actually pretty awesome, very rewarding.
I think that's one of the the unique things about PSYOP, because you would not see that in infantry. You never see that like, hey, this 20-year guy's probably got a P3 profile and he's broke.
Yeah, very, very different, very different. So now you've got a new contract. You're back here at Fort Bragg. What can you tell us about the current spot that you're in?
Sure. So my current title is site lead for the company that I work for out here. And essentially we have a contract that is sort of PSYOP a la carte. And every geographic command is signed on to that contract, and including some functional command SOCOM for one is signed off to that contract, and so is the State Department GEC. And that allows them to access that vehicle and do PSYOP, do whatever they need and stuff, and we'll find a way to do it. And we have subcontractor companies all around the world and stuff to help make that happen. And so I kind of comprise one element of that network. So I have everything on Fort Bragg as far as the company goes, and there's people, company reps throughout the world. There's even one in SOC Corps right now who's stationed there permanently and stuff to work with them, provide that continuity and have that reach back support into the network, where if he can't find anything or I can't find anything for a certain issue or problem, so somebody within that network can find it.
Wow, that's awesome. So moving on, you're a published author. 3 articles out of the Special Warfare magazine.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Can you tell us about those 3 articles, or which one you liked the most?
Sure. So the first one I wrote was called "The Genesis of ISIS," and it was in 2014, I believe, and that was as ISIS was coming up and becoming the flash pan, and so it was a good time to just write about their history and how did this organization just evolve from seemingly out of nowhere and become this major force in Syria and Iraq. And so another one I co-authored as multiple authors called "What Do Others Think and How Do We Know What They Are Thinking?" But it was for strategic multi-layer assessment out of Tampa. Very good, very thick paper that multiple people contributed to. And the last one for Special Warfare magazine was what's called "What Should PSYOP Do Next?"
Okay.
And that was for the 100th anniversary issue of Special Warfare magazine. So they solicited anyone who wanted to contribute an article about the history of PSYOP.
Don't sell yourself. You were sought out to write that article.
Yeah. So sought out, and there were contracts involved.
So Aaron, I got to ask, where do you think the future it lies with PSYOP? Where do you think it's going?
One of the aspects of that history that we look at is from all this history, from 100 years of PSYOP, what are the lessons that we can pull out of this? Because that's the practical aspect of it. It starts getting to the academic and stuff. But myself and the other authors, one of them was Russ Chaddick, who's a former PSYOP alumni, and the other was Sean Chenoweth, who's a current reserve PSYOP officer. We have 100 years worth of history and 100 years worth of lessons that you can pull out of there. So given our current environment, what can we actually do next? What should we do next? And that was the impetus that generated that article.
So with these dramatic social media platforms just amplifying all over the place, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Telegram, YouTube. I can just go on for days on these different platforms that not only we as Americans use, but our enemies use on a regular basis to communicate with, to amplify what they're doing, to use as propaganda almost, which is our wheelhouse being PSYOPers is propaganda. Where do you see that going in the future, and how does it affect us in the near future?
I think you have to go back to the history of how all of this evolved. And, you look initially when the internet came out and we had desktop computers, you maybe had an email that you could And you start to fast forward that until now, where we have a cell phone in our pocket that brings us our email instantly. It brings us any kind of likes, social media posts, anything in our pocket instantaneously. So huge span of change within 20 years. You went from a stationary product to one that's in your pocket. I'd argue too is it's its own terrain. You have land, sea, and air, but now you've also got this internet terrain of how can I access somebody's thoughts and behavior, and that's it's a powerful tool.
It is. And is there any like countries that you foresee getting ahead of us in their ability to utilize this internet and social media platforms to have a competitive edge on like psychological warfare?
I would say that the two big ones, the two gorillas in the room are China and Russia, and so obviously for two primary reasons is that both of them have a large labor pool of individuals and it's cheap, and both of them have much less restrictions than we do. So that's it's a huge, powerful combination.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially if it's going against you. U.S. PSYOP has a large fight ahead of it, and so in a very subtle fight, where it's not very clear, who's winning or who's losing, or even what the score is. I think one of the things that makes China so formidable is that instead of we might have a whole of government approach. We had a whole of government approach to Iraq and Afghanistan, where you had State Departments, multiple agencies coming in, Department of Defense, of course, coming in and addressing the Afghanistan issue or addressing the Iraq issue, which including nation building, anything from schools, police, the government itself. China, by far, can do a whole of society approach because their government and their companies, there's communist government, so they have state-run companies that can be moved at will, and many of the CEOs of Chinese companies also dual hat as members of the People's Liberation Army. So all of that, you could imagine, the CEO of any major defense contracting company gets tasked by the government to execute something, and he simply just puts on his military hat and does it. It's a huge thing to contend with.
Yeah, pretty wild, and a very difficult problem set to maneuver while we're trying to abide by our regulations and values and stuff as we go about our way to influence and persuade different folks out there throughout the world too. Because we're not just doing tactical deployments like you and I have done. We're also doing regional deployments to embassies in different countries that need more humanitarian efforts as opposed to tactical urban warfare efforts.
It's a problem when you're in the United States. You've been the big kid on the block for so many years, and there's a standard, whether you like it or not, that's applied to you that is not applied to China and Russia. There's very different expectations of both of those governments. And so if we were doing some of the things that the Chinese government is doing, which we can go into, police states, having cameras that identify people's faces throughout the day, social credits, the various other things that they're involved with the Chinese state, we would get massacred, never survive that.
No, we would not. All right, well, thank you, Erin, for being our guest today. I really appreciate you coming out and taking time out of your day to talk to us about your story and kind of some advances in our branch and regiment as it goes forward.
Cool. All right, great. Thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah. Well, this concludes our episode with Erin, our PSYOP veteran, current member of the Digital Engagement Detachment. If you guys got any questions, please feel free to reach out to your SOAR recruiter and or 8th POG as a whole. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Appreciate it.